Hi, welcome to the McCall Center. I'm Chadwick, and I'm a visual artist and photographer. Today, I wanted to share a process that I like to do that involves collage. It's a process that I use when I find I'm getting stuck in my head and kind of overthinking things. And basically what it is to make collages, but not using found imagery, but first making my own source material, my own source imagery, and then deconstructing that process or deconstructing that work in order to reconstruct it as something else. And so today, that's what I'll be sharing. And I wanted to first just kind of, before we get into that, I just wanted to share some of the supplies that I use. So the things that I use is materials of various quality. They're things that most people have around the house, or they're not difficult to get your hands on. And I will share those things with you now. All right, so the first thing that we'll need is a couple of sheets of paper. I have about 5 sheets of paper here. And also some wax paper that I'm going to use as a palette to roll paint on. You can use this, you can use wax paper that you get from the grocery store. I'm going to use different tools for applying paint. So I have a brayer here, also a roller, a paint roller, and a brush. I also have my trusty Sharpie, a foam brush, a pair of scissors, pardon that, and then also something for just kind of random mark making and for stamps. So like I have this tool here that just kind of has edge to it, and also a fork. And another thing that I'll be using is a cap to one of my markers. We also have some house paint, which is just a really inexpensive way to get some cool colors. Also have some professional quality acrylic paint from Golden, as well as a homemade marker and a store-bought paint marker. And also some tape, which I'll be using at a certain part of the process. And with those materials, that should give us what we need to be able to move forward. All right, so with those materials set aside, I'm going to start getting into the first part of the process, which is going to be to create our own source material for collages. We're going to paint and make marks on paper so that we'll then have something that we can rip apart and cut apart so that we can turn it into something else. And I will begin showing you how we start that process. So the first thing that I like to do is basically take a little bit of paint and apply it to my wax paper palette. Fairly generous with that. And then I'm going to get my roller. I'm going to get my roller in there, get some coverage. And then I'm going to take my paper, make a little bit less of a mess. There's your wood. And I'm going to completely cover this one sheet of paper with the color red. You can use any color you like. The color isn't specifically necessary. It doesn't have to be this. You're going to be able to just kind of make whatever markers you want, but for the first sheet, let's cover it completely with whatever color we choose. And then we're going to simply set that piece of paper aside. We're going to give that a little bit of time to dry. And while we do that, I'm going to pour a little bit more paint onto my sheet of wax paper. that to the side. And with the second piece of paper, I'm going to switch tools, and this time I'm going to use my brayer to apply paint. So I'm going to get a little bit of paint on my brayer. I'm going to spread that out. And then on my sheet of paper, I'm just going to roll it kind of randomly. And on this one, I'm not going to cover the entire sheet of paper. I'm just going to, you see, there's not really a whole lot of planning how I'm making marks. I'm just kind of moving the paint across the paper in whatever way feels good. And then I'm going to take that sheet, and I'm also going to let that dry. And then I'm going to put this away, because I'm going to start another color. So the next color that I'm going to use is going to be yellow. And so I'm going to do the same thing as I just done, and pouring a little bit of the yellow paint on my palette. And move that to the side. I'm going to get some paint on my roller again, like I did the first, and I'm going to cover this completely in yellow. And you can use anything for this. You can do it with a brush, with a wide brush. You can do it with a brayer if you like. You can do it with a roller. The tools aren't really important. It's just a matter of what we're doing. So for the variety, we're just going to cover this entirely with yellow paint. And once that's done, I'm going to set that piece of paper aside. Let that dry. We'll add a little bit more yellow to the wax paper. Get that in. And then using the roller, I'm just gonna kind of do the same thing I did before with the brayer in the red. Just cover the paper, but not in its entirety. Just kind of cover it till it looks interesting in some way, a little distressed, a little frayed. And then I'm gonna take that sheet and set it aside. My last sheet of paper, I'm definitely going to write. And I'm going to cover this entire sheet with some text. So let's say, welcome to McCall center. All right. And then I'm gonna set that aside. And once we've done that, we're gonna give that time to dry. So usually while I'm letting those dry, I'll just kind of find something to occupy myself for about 20 minutes or so. It can be scrolling through social media or having a snack. Just something to pass the time while those dry, which doesn't take long because it's all acrylic paint. But for the sake of time today, I do have some papers that I had already done before I got here so that we can move on to the next parts of the activity. And basically what I like to do with this stuff is I'll just kind of come up with some random instructions for myself. Or if I'm doing this activity with others, like I am now, with some random instructions for the people that I'm sharing this process with. And there's not a lot of rhyme and reason to it. It's just kind of something to take what we have and to kind of create a little bit of chaos, which would be really great for us to be able to, and deconstructing it without overthinking it too much. So I'm gonna share that process as we go. So as you see here, I have another 5 sheets of paper that I had done, partially covered in red, fully covered in a solid yellow, fully covered in a solid red, partially covered in the yellow, and then something with text on it that I've kind of written in a style that I like to write. So the first thing I would say is I'll give you a second to pick the paper that you just tend to like the most or appeals to you. Whatever that might be. So in my case, it's going to be the red. And my first instruction is going to be rip that in half. Simply tear it. Tear it in half. Now, let's take one of the other sheets. You can pick any random sheet you like. For me, I'm going to pick the sheet that had text on it. And I'm going to say flip that over. And we have a Sharpie to write with. And I'm going to say all over the back of the sheet, just make some shapes. They can be any kind of shapes. They can be circles. They can be triangles. You can do squares. It can be kind of random shapes that don't have a lot of rigid borders to them, but just fill up the sheet with shapes. Okay. And while you still have that sheet down, you are going to cut up or cut out those shapes. And for the sake of time, I'm going to kind of fast forward past this, and I'll show you what we have when I'm done cutting out all my shapes. So the reason I like to turn the sheet over before I make the shapes is because I like to just kind of have a little bit of randomness to the way that the final shapes come out. I don't want to have too much control because sometimes that just gets in the way of having fun. I like to create something to respond to this unexpected. So this is what I have so far when I cut those shapes out, and there'll be things that I use in my collage. I also have scraps that are left. And I can also use these in the composition of my collage. So I'll set those aside. And then we're gonna pick a third sheet of paper. And whatever we pick with that particular piece of paper, let's paint something or draw something on it. I think I'm gonna do it on this sheet. I'm gonna take the black paint and just smear a little bit of it on my wax paper palette. Take my brayer, move it out a little bit. And I'm going to use this marker cap as a stamp. And then I'm going to take my small brayer and I'm just going to make that paper. Set that aside. On this sheet, we will again go with the marker and we'll write something or draw something. So I think I'll just kind of start with making something that looks like a leaf. Just something very simple. Maybe do another one. And I'm just gonna write good day. Good day. All right. And then here I have my last sheet, and I'm not gonna do anything with this sheet of paper. This is gonna be my background. And so now I have 4 other sheets of paper that are beginnings of what I can start deconstructing to make a composition with my collage. And I guess maybe we can do something like kind of fast forward through that process. I'll do it here in front of the camera. And if we can either fast forward through it, or we can also just kind of show at the end what it looks like. But I'll start just kind of arranging things and seeing how it looks. So one thing that we're going to see is that we don't have to just stick with the things that we have as are. We can also further work on these. We can write more things on, we can draw and write more things on these. We can cut them up. And we're going to do a little bit of all of that in order to make our final composition. So I think for this one, I'm going to start by ripping this sheet, kind of getting a nice uneven tear. And then a more even rip on this side. Sometimes using a ruler as a straight edge can be helpful with laying that down. And cut this up a little bit. So one thing I like to do when I'm making collages is once I know that I want something to be down in a particular place, I glue that thing down, even if I don't necessarily know what the rest of the composition is going to be. So I know that I'm pretty happy with this yellow sheet in that place in my collage. So I'm just going to glue that down. Okay. And you can use, like I'm using a glue stick right now. You can also use Elmer's glue. You can use matte medium. Any type of, just about any type of glue that works well with paper is going to be fine. Also like this, but I think it looks a little bit too clean. So I'm just going to tear that again. I'm going to glue that down. So thank you for spending time with me as we go through that process. Like I said, it's just kind of a process that I really enjoy to get me out of my headspace and just kind of having fun with a few materials that are just laying around to create something that's interesting to me, and I can also get ideas from it and kind of play around with I have plenty of scraps now, so it's like I can also kind of go on and make more collages with the things that I've already created if I want to, and you can do the same. If you're interested in just kind of seeing more of what I do, like I said, I'm a visual artist. I paint some, I shoot photography. You can find me at chadwick.com. That's CHD WCK, so Chadwick without the vowels. And on Instagram and Twitter at CHD WCK ART. And I hope you enjoyed that. And I hope you're able to make something for yourself that's creative and kind of just gets you into a fun space of making art. And have a good day.